The life journey of Abraham Lincoln. Imagine a boy born in a small wooden cabin, so poor that he had to borrow books to study. A boy who failed in business, lost many elections, faced heartbreaking tragedies in life. Yet one day, that same boy became the President of the United States and changed the course of history. This is the extraordinary story of Abraham Lincoln, a man who proved that persistence, character, and courage can reshape a nation. And for anyone learning English or trying to improve themselves, his story teaches one powerful lesson. Your beginning does not decide your destiny. On a cold winter day, Feb 12, 1809, in a small wooden cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky, a baby boy was born into a poor farming family. No one in that tiny settlement could have imagined that this boy would one day become one of the most respected leaders in history. That boy was Abraham Lincoln. His father, Thomas Lincoln, was a hard-working farmer and carpenter. His mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, was a gentlewoman known for her kindness and wisdom. But the family lived in deep poverty. Their home was a simple log cabin. The floor was made of rough wood. There were no comforts that we take for granted today. No electricity, no heating systems, no proper schools. Life on the American frontier was tough. From a young age, Abraham learned that survival required hard work. As soon as he was strong enough, he helped his father in the fields, chopping wood and clearing land. But something about Abraham was different. While other children played freely, Abraham had a deep curiosity about the world. He loved stories and knowledge. Books were extremely rare in his village. His family owned almost none. But whenever Abraham found a book, he treated it like treasure. He read slowly and carefully, sometimes repeating the same page many times to understand every word. Sometimes he walked miles just to borrow a book from a neighbor. At night, when everyone else was asleep, young Abraham sat behind the fireplace reading by the dim glow of burning wood. That faint light illuminated not just the pages of books but the mind of a future leader. Without realizing it, those quiet nights of reading were preparing him for a destiny far beyond the small wooden cabin where he was born. Life tested Abraham Lincoln from a very early age. When Abraham was only 9 years old, tragedy struck his family. His beloved mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, suddenly became ill and passed away. For young Abraham, the loss was devastating. She had been the person who encouraged his love for reading and learning. Without her, the house felt empty. But life continued, and sometime later, his father married Sarah Bush Lincoln. Fortunately for Abraham, Sarah was kind and supportive. She saw his intelligence and encouraged his desire to learn. She once said that Abraham was the most curious boy she had ever seen. Despite her encouragement, Abraham's education remained very limited. In total, he received less than 1 year of formal schooling throughout his childhood. But Lincoln did not see this as a limitation. Instead, he educated himself. He read everything he could find: history books, law books, biographies, religious writings. He practiced writing on wooden boards and pieces of charcoal when paper was not available. Before becoming a lawyer or a president, Lincoln worked many ordinary jobs. He worked as a farm laborer. He split wooden rails for fences, He worked as a shopkeeper. He served as a postmaster in a small town. At one point, he even started a small business with a friend, but the business failed. Lincoln was felt with heavy debts that took him years to repay. Many people around him thought he would remain just another struggling man in a small town. But Lincoln believed in something powerful, that life is not defined by where you begin, but by how you continue. As Abraham Lincoln grew older, he began paying attention to the problems of society. He observed how laws shaped people's lives. He saw inequality, injustice, and political struggles. Slowly, he developed a deep interest in politics. In 1832, Lincoln decided to run for public office for the first time. He entered the race for the Illinois General Assembly. At that time, he was still young and relatively unknown. His campaign had very little money, and as expected, he lost the election. For many people, such a defeat would have ended their political ambitions, but Lincoln treated failure as a lesson rather than a defeat. He continued working hard and studying law. Soon he became a respected lawyer known for his honesty and logical thinking. People trusted him because he never tried to deceive anyone. Because of this character, people started calling him Honest Abe. In 1834, Lincoln ran for the Illinois legislature again. This time he won. It was a turning point in his life. The boy who once studied by the light of a fireplace had now entered the world of politics. Behind every public leader is a private life filled with emotions, relationships, and struggles. In 1842, Abraham Lincoln married Mary Todd Lincoln, a well educated woman from a respected family in Kentucky. Mary was intelligent, ambitious, and deeply interested in politics. Their marriage was filled with both love and challenges. Together, they had four sons: Robert Todd Lincoln, Edward Baker Lincoln, William Wallace Lincoln, Thomas Lincoln. But happiness did not last forever. Three of their sons died at young ages due to illness. Each loss broke Lincoln's heart. He was known to suffer from deep sadness and depression during these times. Yet, even in the midst of personal sorrow, he continued serving his country with dedication. These painful experiences made Lincoln more compassionate toward the suffering of others. During Lincoln's time, one of the biggest moral issues in America was slavery. Millions of African Americans were forced into unpaid labor and treated as property. Lincoln believed this system was morally wrong. His views became widely known during his famous debates with Stephen A. Douglas, known as the Lincoln-Douglas debates. These debates attracted national attention. Lincoln spoke with clarity and moral conviction. Even though he did not win that election, his reputation grew across the country. Soon he became a leading figure in the Republican Party. People began to see him not just as a lawyer or politician, but as a man of principles. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln ran for the highest office in the nation, the presidency of the United States. Many critics doubted him. They said he was too simple, too inexperienced, too ordinary. But ordinary people saw something different. They saw honesty, they saw courage, they saw a man who understood their struggles. And so, in November 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected the 16th President of the United States. But his victory came at a dangerous moment in American history. Soon after his elections, the nation began to divide. Southern states started leaving the Union. This conflict would soon lead to the American Civil War. Lincoln had become president at the most difficult time imaginable. When Abraham Lincoln became the president of United States, the nation was already standing on the edge of the crisis. The country was deeply divided. Many southern states believed they had the right to continue slavery. When Lincoln won the presidential elections in 1860, several southern states decided to leave the Union. This division soon turned into a brutal conflict known as the American Civil War. The war began in 1861. Families were divided. Friends found themselves fighting on opposite sides. The nation itself seemed to be tearing apart. Lincoln faced enormous pressure. Many people criticized him. Some believed he was too cautious, others thought he was too bold. But Lincoln remained focused on one goal: to preserve the Union. He believed that if the country broke apart, the idea of democracy would be weakened forever. The war was long and painful. Thousands of soldiers died in battles. Each report of casualties weighed heavily on Lincoln's heart. Despite the tragedy, Lincoln continued leading with determination and compassion. In 1863, he made one of the most historic decisions in world history. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This document declared that enslaved people in the rebellious states were free. The Civil War was no longer only about saving the Union, it had become a fight for human freedom. Lincoln understood that true unity could only exist in a nation where people were not treated as property. His decision changed the moral direction of the war and inspired millions around the world. During the Civil War, one of the most devastating battles took place in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The Battle of Gettysburg resulted in enormous loss of life. Thousands of soldiers from both sides died on that battlefield. Later, a ceremony was organized to honor the fallen soldiers and dedicated a nation's cemetery. President Lincoln was invited to give a speech. On November 19, 1863, Lincoln stood before a large crowd and delivered a speech that would become one of the most famous speeches in history. This speech is known as the Gettysburg Address. Surprisingly, the speech was very short. It lasted only a few minutes, but its impact was enormous. In that speech, Lincoln reminded Americans that their nation was founded on the principle that all people are created equal. He said the sacrifices of soldiers must not be meaningless. Instead, their sacrifice should inspire the living to continue the struggle for freedom and democracy. Today, the Gettysburg Address is studied across the world as a masterpiece of leadership and communication. It proved that powerful ideas do not require long speeches. Sometimes just a few honest words can inspire generations. By 1865, the Civil War was finally coming to an end. The Union had won. The nation was slowly beginning to heal. Lincoln was already thinking about how to rebuild the country and bring peace between the North and the South. He believed in forgiveness rather than revenge. But just as hope was returning to the nation, tragedy struck. On April 14, 1865, President Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. During the performance, an actor named John Wilkes Booth entered the presidential box and shot Lincoln. The attack shocked the entire nation. Doctors tried to save him, but the injury was too severe. The next morning, on April 15, 1865, Abraham Lincoln passed away. News of his death spread rapidly. Across the country, people cried openly in the streets. Even many of his political opponents mourned his loss. They realized that the nation had lost a leader whose courage and compassion had guided them through the darkest chapter of their history. More than a century has passed since the life of Abraham Lincoln, yet his influence remains powerful. He is remembered not just as a president but as a symbol of perseverance, honesty, and moral courage. Today, one of the most famous monuments in America, the Lincoln Memorial, stands proudly in Washington, D.C. Visitors from around the world come to see the statue of Lincoln seated in quiet dignity. On its walls are carved some of his most powerful words. But Lincoln's true legacy goes beyond monuments and statues. His life story continues to inspire people everywhere. He began life in poverty. He had very little formal education. He experienced failure, loss, and criticism. Yet he never gave up. Instead, he kept learning, he kept improving, and kept serving others. For anyone trying to learn English, improve themselves, or build a better future, Lincoln's journey carries a powerful message. Your background does not limit your future. What truly matters is your persistence. The life of Abraham Lincoln reminds us that greatness does not come from comfort. It comes from struggle, from failure, from standing up again when life knocks you down. A boy born in a small wooden cabin with almost no education faced poverty, heartbreak, and countless failures, yet he rose to become the President of the United States and helped guide the nation through the darkest time of the American Civil War. His journey proves one powerful truth: your beginning does not decide your destiny. Now, here is a question for you. If Abraham Lincoln had given up after his early failures, would the world ever remember his name today? And what about you? What could your life become if you refuse to quit? If you enjoy this story and want more inspiring life journeys like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story. Because sometimes one story can change the way we see our own life. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.